Hi, you are listening to Sara Carrigan, Olympic gold medalist, wife, mother of two, coach and road safety educator. You are listening to the Physical Performance Show.
And the winner is...
Failure is not an option.
I've had my ups and my downs.
I think it's an absolutely breakthrough experience.
Welcome to the Physical Performance Show, the show designed to inspire the pursuit of your physical best performance. I'm your host, Brad Beer. Listen in as we delve into how the world's top physical performers achieve their success, as well as the highs, the lows, and the journey of getting there. Let's get ready, set, let's go. Welcome back, or welcome to another episode of the Physical Performance Show, brought to you by Sanitarium PB and Pogo Physio. I'm Brad Beer, physiotherapist by trade and training, and founder of Pogo Physio. The aim of this show is to educate and inspire you towards the pursuit of your own physical best performance. We do this through interviews featuring some of the world's top physical performers and also some of the world's preeminent experts in their chosen fields. Each week, we aim to bring you the highs, the lows, and the learnings of the featured guests. And today's featured guest, physical performer, does not disappoint. Sara Carrigan, OAM Order of Australia medal recipient and 2004 female road race Olympic Games champion, really opens up on some fantastic stories and recollections from an absolutely wonderful career. There's some humour, some sadness, and everything in between, along with the performance round and Sara's physical challenge for the week. So get ready to jump in with Sara Carrigan, 2004 Olympic road racing champion. Here we go. Sara Carrigan, OAM, Order of Australia medal recipient. This has been something I've been looking forward to for a long time. So great to finally welcome you to the Physical Performance Show.
Thank you. It's great to be here to contribute to all that you are providing and giving back to all your listeners.
Sara, we start with one thing that's a little bit fun, and that's what's one thing that Sara Carrigan, mother of two beautiful little kids, Olympic gold medalist in the women's road race 2004, what's one thing that you are learning in life at the moment?
One thing that is really occupying a lot of my time at the moment is keeping my kiddies engaged, healthy, fun. I've actually been attending and reading workshops about aware parenting, which has been about understanding your child better and bringing more connection, trust, and fun into the relationship with your child, so that they're then naturally willing to cooperate and behave pleasantly. It's a real holistic approach. So, that's really been different to how I was brought up and has challenged, a lot of different things that I thought I would do as a mum, but that has now changed.
Any specifics on what you're doing different to how you thought you'd do it as a parent?
Well, let's say, for instance, I'm sleeping with my children. It's something that, I thought that I would be, having them in a separate room, but, we have our beds side by side, and I thought perhaps as well that I'd perhaps breastfeed my kiddies for about 3 months, but no, 18 months on for my youngest one, and I'm still feeding him strong, and my elder one, who's 3, is still having, a drink here and there. So all of those things are definitely different to what I thought it might have been, or the decisions that I thought I would make before I was a parent.
Well, I'm tracking in similar timeframes with yourself, Sara. We're both born in the same year, and on my parenting journey of 2 little girls, I can relate to that. I thought I would do it like that as a parent, and I'm doing it 180 degrees opposite. So I think you just got to work with what you can, and the kids that you're entrusted to.
Yeah, that's right. You've got to go with the instinct and feel what is right for your own gut, and feel happy about that. I mean, there's so many different ways to do the job, as there is in anything in life, and it's about what we feel comfortable as parents in the end. So yeah, it's been a wonderful journey so far.
And it will continue. And I like the words you just used, Sarah, around instinct. It's something that in preparing for today's time with you, I went back and watched the 2004 women's road race where you took the gold medal, and instincts played a big part in that. I'd like to just leave that there and come back to that. But before we get to the highs of your cycling sporting career, let's just go back and refresh to give listeners context of your genesis story. So how did Sara Carrigan first find her way onto two wheels?
Well, I mean, when I was 6, I received a bike from Santa for Christmas, and I remember it had training wheels on it, and that's when we lived on the farm. And somehow one of them broke, and Dad said, right, well, we're not going to fix that. You're just going to start learning how to ride. And he pushed me down a long grassed hill, and down I went, plopped off at the end, and then I just really had this determination to want to learn how to ride. And I remember, getting many Gray's knee, riding around the path around our farmhouse, trying to learn on two wheels. I had no idea, however, through all those years that have then passed up until I was 15 years old, that a road bike existed, that the whole world of road cycling existed. But I just loved being out on my bike. I loved the feeling of freedom, the adventure. And so when there was a talent identification program at school, it pricked my ears, because this is for cycling, because I thought, well, I love riding my little bike. I had a little BMX bike. I did advance from the little red rocket that I got for Christmas when I was 6 to a BMX bike. I went along to the testing. It was a beep test. They do a lot of beep tests for different testing, for different sports, and a vertical jump test. So I did a lot of cross country running at that time. So the beep test was something that got me through to the next round to do an on-bike test, and I actually wasn't selected at the start. And thankfully, someone pulled out. And they said, well, hey, Sarah, would you like to come and join us, be a part of the program? You have to have a road bike. And I said, well, my brother has just got a new bike. It's a mountain bike. It had gears, so I'd never seen a bike with gears before. And anyway, eventually we worked out that, that wasn't going to be appropriate. And they lent me a bike for 10 weeks as part of 15 students. And I just loved it. As I said, I love the freedom, the adventure, the exploration, and it really became a natural progression from there to just want to improve myself.
And I think I've read that it was at 14 to 15 that you really found your feet, so to speak, on the bike. So up until that point, it was all just enjoyment and, as you say, exploration, adventure, freedom. So, I mean, were you training of any capacity at that point, Sarah? It was all just riding your bike around the neighbourhood.
Yeah, well, at 15, that was when I was a part of that talent identification program. So that's when, we rode. That was when I had more structure around it. Before that, I was riding my little BMX bike around our backyard, playing different games with my brothers and, hopping over this and hopping over that. And I used to beg Mum and Dad to take us to the BMX track. I never actually got into BMX racing, but I loved going there. So I always had this dream of when I was a little girl. I remember watching, it was when I was 12 actually, the Barcelona Olympic Games. And there was nothing in particular, like no particular sport. I just remember watching that and saying, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to be there. And then, those years passed until I found cycling and realised how passionate and excited and how much I loved it. So even though I thought to myself, well, how could little old me be able to become the best in the world and, wear the green and gold and win Olympic gold medal? As I mentioned before, it just became a natural progression to want to improve myself. So as part of that 10-week program, they introduced me to local racing, and then that led into the regional racing, state championships, national championships, junior worlds when I was in grade 12, and then thereon after to achieve my life dream of winning an Olympic gold medal in 2004 in Athens, of all places.
Oh, gosh. And I think, Athens, the home of the Olympic Games, and the irony is that in 92, as we're tracking on the same birth year, I think that was the first year watching the Barcelona Olympics that for me I was just awestruck with this thing called the Olympic Games. And the irony is that Australia won our first road cycling women's medal there with Kathy Watt, but that didn't grab your attention specifically at that point. Is that right?
No, I didn't know about Kathy Watt and the gold medal until I was introduced to road cycling. And I remember first meeting her, and I was definitely in awe then, because I wanted to do what she had done. Meeting her was, really special at that time. I have a photo actually, and it was pretty amazing then to follow that up. However many years later, how many years later is that? 92 to 2004.
That's 12 years, 3 Olympic Games.
Yeah. For me, something that I was so passionate about, I did lots of sports when I was young, horse riding, little athletics, dancing, cross-country running. So there was a point where I had to make the decision, okay, I have to let go of these other sports to concentrate on my cycling if I really want to advance it. And that was a slightly tough decision at the time, but in on one hand, but then on the other hand, it wasn't, because I knew just how much I loved it and what I wanted to do. So I know a lot of kiddies that, or young athletes that decide to put all their efforts into one sport. That can be a really tough decision for them, because I guess with that comes more pressure as well. Both with school and with what your mum and dad are providing with their time and effort. Obviously with the other siblings involved as well. So I couldn't have done it without my family that I had, who supported me so much and all the way. Actually, my dad started riding even when I was 15 to ride with me in his King G stubby shorts, my brother's mountain bike, and that was a bit of a laugh when he first started. And now, there's no way he was going to wear the Lycra pants, being a farmer all those years ago. But now, he's on the bike for a number of hours and loves it.
And so here's Dad with the rug, the King G shorts on, not wearing Lycra, and to think that those first early rides were the start of what would become a Olympic gold medalist journey. Isn't there so much irony in that?
Oh, I know. And I guess it would just, he wanted to be a part of my journey, and got on the bike. And I mean, I owe so much to so many different people who gave, the teachers at my school who started that program, and my coaches early on. You just don't realize at the time what goes into that. And especially, I guess, for now, me being a coach, what goes into that. To provide opportunities for these young ones to come through and help realise their dreams. Yeah,
it really does take a lot of a big support network with the right intentions. And on that, I mean, brothers and sisters, how many brothers did you have growing up, Sarah? And were you the only daughter in the family, the only girl?
Yes, I was the only girl. I have 2 younger brothers. We were always out and about playing. And as I said, I think coming from the farm, we loved being outdoors. And then when we moved to the Gold Coast, luckily enough, we moved to a place that had a big backyard where we could, ride our motorbikes, and we had pet sheep and, ride our push bikes as well. So we had plenty of space to be able to be active and enjoy the outdoors. And that now, it's funny with my kiddies, that time on the farm, even though it was only for the first 7 years of my life, it was so amazing to have that outdoors opportunity. So I want to try and provide that for my kiddies now, as they're growing up, to have that ability to develop that proactiveness and to show initiative rather than, being stuck indoors and, not being out and about.
Yeah, no, that's and it's interesting. As a physiotherapist, there are studies that now show that if kids are exposed to a variety of activities through their developmental years rather than just one sport, they do tend to do better ultimately in the sport that they choose. So there's a lot to that.
Yeah, and I guess now too, being a coach and trying to help other parents feel, ease their mind in providing skills for young kiddies to, have those life skills, have that feeling of confidence and autonomy and freedom for them to experience the joys that come with cycling, and for the parents to feel, relaxed about that. It's actually a really interesting thing with the time I spent overseas in Europe, living there for the 10 years that I was competing. The way we, especially here on the Gold Coast, view putting our kids into nippers and on the beach. It's about a life skill, and it's a really important part to bring our kids up. And the way that the Europeans see the beach is, oh my goodness, how could you put your kids in such an uncontrollable environment? It's you don't know what's going to happen, and oh no, there's no way I could put my kid in the beach and with those waves and how deep the water is and with the way the tide's going. And all those thoughts and fears that they have about the beach are generally what a lot of parents have about their kids being on bikes here in Australia. So it's really interesting how the different cultures have different ways of bringing up their children, and what's been a part of a culture for so long is so different to another country. So for me, just bit by bit, I've been trying to help spread that road safety awareness and the education, both from the cycling point of view and from the driver point of view.
Yeah, and it really does take education on both sides of the fence, doesn't it? It's but I mean, over the years, you would have seen changes in behaviours from when you were growing up on the bike there in the 90s through to now at 2018. We're recording this, and while we're on road safety, what would be your key message to cyclists and motorists alike to get on together on the road well?
Well, I think definitely for riders, it's about, or for both actually, it's about education. So riders, to start off with, it's about actually, some people think they can get on a bike and ride, and they most probably can, but if they can learn some skills of how to be safer, both for themselves, for the other riders they ride with, and for the other road users, the motorists, well, it's going to help that's not such a rosy relationship between cars and riders. And it's been really interesting for the motorist point of view. I've done a number of workshops with professional drivers around educating them on around vulnerable road users, pedestrians, and bike riders. And again, there is education there about them not understanding the rules or why riders do what they do. And after conducting some of those workshops, all of the drivers came out going, wow, we didn't realise this. And literally, we put the shoe on the other foot and got them on a bike after some of the theory that we did inside. We then got them out on the bike. And it really opened their eyes to have an understanding and an appreciation and a respect. And I think that's what it's about for both sides, is tolerance and respect. I mean, after all, it's a common place to be able to enjoy our beautiful community here on the Gold Coast. So I think it's just in trying to get the education from both sides so that we can, enjoy that happy dance together out on the road.
Tolerance and respect, so well said. Sarah, we're still painting a bit of the picture that led up to, I guess, the highlight of your career, the gold medal in Athens. But was there a moment in your developmental years, so you're on the bike, you're in the Talent ID program, you're starting to intentionally train, but was there a moment when this little girl who was pushed down the hill by her dad, maybe in his King G shorts then as well at 6 years of age, but started to believe, you used the phrase that you knew what you wanted to do, but at what point did you start to galvanise your belief that you had some talent and that, that you were going places in the world of women's cycling?
I don't think, it just gradually progressed as I went through the motions. And I think I can really pay a lot of thanks to the coach that I had at the time, who really worked on the mental side of my training. With young kids, the physical side, with all athletes, the physical side is such an important part. However, what I've seen over a long period of time, not only as an athlete but as a coach now, is that mental side just doesn't seem to get the same training that it ought to. Because, especially when you get to the elite level, all the athletes are pretty much at the same level, but it's that mental side that makes the difference. It's that mental side that gives you the edge over whether you can handle the pressure, whether you can handle the pressure from, the outside pressure, your own pressure, and to be able to, perform at your best. That's what it's all about in the end, is performing at your best, being your best. Because you can't control what the other athletes in your race are going to do. So for me, my coach, when I very first started, really helped me to work on that belief as I built through those years of, racing the local races and then heading to the state championships. I remember distinctly winning, all 3 events there, just simply because he, really helped instill that belief in my ability and helped focus that. And then when that led into the next level of going to the national championships, it certainly comes with a lot of, it sounds, I hope I haven't painted it as a too easy road, because it was certainly a tough one with different decisions. I don't never like to call them sacrifices, because I feel, well, if you're going after a certain goal, for me, my life dream of winning that Olympic gold medal, of being the best in the world, some might see them as sacrifices, and I guess in some way they are, but they're making the tough decisions to get you to where you want to go.
Yeah, so there's a difference, sacrifice and decisions. I like that distinction. So the decisions that you're making, if we just go back, what was it about that 92 viewing of the Barcelona Olympic Games that grabbed your interest to then later see this, as you say, your goal of becoming an Olympic champion? What was it about the Olympics?
I loved the feeling, I loved watching how these people were at this state of absolute pride and elation of obviously all the hard work that they have put in, and to realise that in that moment. I remember just trying to fathom, as a 12-year-old, how amazing that would be to be the best that you could be, and that's being the best in the world. So it's all about, where you have the hard work meets an opportunity to then present your best, to be the best. So that in itself is amazing, and it's hard to find that in other aspects and areas of life, and to feel that real high of where everything comes together, of all the time, all the energy, the effort, the passion, the hard work, that it comes to that point where it comes off, and it's an indescribable, beautiful feeling. All
right, so we want to go to that feeling. I really just like what you said. It's hard to find that in life in other ways. Do you think that's because it's not objective? Because an Olympic gold medal speaks for itself. That is the pinnacle, as you say, of hard work met in opportunity. It's the pinnacle of years of decisions, not sacrifices, to be there. And it's objective. You either get it or you don't. Do you think that sometimes in life, particularly say in parenting, there's no gold medal, is there? You never feel like you're measuring up.
Well, yes, the goalposts change all the time. 1 minute, 1 week, 1 day, 1 month, when you're trying to achieve a certain, how do I say it? In one particular week where my kiddies are at a certain level, I'm doing certain activities to meet that, and then the next minute it changes, and it's all about being flexible and adaptable. And you know what? They were huge qualities as well in being an athlete. I had to be flexible and adaptable to be able to get where I needed to go. So I think that's now been a great quality to possess, being a mother, because I know some family friends that they're very how do I describe it, they're not so flexible and adaptable, and they've really struggled with their journey into motherhood, because it's not as they thought it would be, and it's been a real challenge to adapt and change, and trying to come up with different ways to deal with that situation of how the kiddies are acting at that particular time. That might sound a little bit all over the shop. I don't know how better to explain it. No,
I think only a parent can understand the need for flexibility and adaptability. Sarah, before we move off that belief, and we want to go to the feeling of the Olympic gold around your neck, but with the belief, you said it wasn't a one moment thing. It just built over years as you improved your results and you met your own expectations through performance. But Was there a moment leading up to 2004 where you really doubted that you had what it took to fulfill that, at that point, life's goal of becoming an Olympic gold medalist?
Was there a moment that I doubted whether I could achieve it? I mean, I know in my journey the doubts came up all the time, and it was about finding the ability to really try and quieten those and strengthen the strengths that I did have, to overshadow those doubts or those negative thoughts that can really hamper, one's journey. So in the previous year, the lead up to the Olympic Games, the pre-Olympic year, I had great form. I'd won World Cups, national championships. I was number 5 in the world. Was in one of the highest rankings that I'd been in my career. And then leading into 2004, at the end of 2000, like that pre-Olympic year, my professional team had collapsed. So there was a lot of uncertainty then leading into the Olympic year. Well, how am I going to actually compete overseas? What team I'm going to be with? That was definitely a moment of, wow, how's this going to happen if I can't even get a ride in a team to race over there? So that was a difficult time. And what ended up happening is that I raced with the Australian team, and it ended up being a perfect scenario where the 3 girls, the three teammates as part of the Olympic team for the 2004 cycling team in Athens, we were all raced together then that year in the Australian team. So it was a great way. I guess, things do happen for a reason some way. Yeah. At the time you can't see it, but we were able to really pull together in that year of 2004 leading into the Olympic Games, and, we knew each other inside and out, and it certainly paid off for race day.
Yeah, so that out of that period of doubt with the professional team collapsing, came some team synergy, which does then play into your victory at the Athens Olympic Games. So let's go there. I watched the video back, Sarah, and I just love that Phil Liggett commentated. He's been a previous guest of the Physical Performance Show, and I grew up with Phil commentating every ride I ever did in my ears. And to have him commentate a Olympic gold ride must be special. And we'll link it up in the show notes. It's such a terrific excerpt from that 3.5-hour race. But can you paint the picture, Sarah, of those, that final part of the race where you break away and you're with the German girl and you go into the line and what happens? Can you take us through what's going on in your head in those final stages of that race?
Yeah, the crowd was absolutely, it was so loud, it was deafening. And I remember my dad was on the last corner with 500 metres to go. So every lap I came around, I could see his flag and his cowboy hat yelling out. But I didn't see him on the last corner as I came into that finishing straight for the final time. And the way the race had turned out was that I still had my teammate that was just behind Anoni Wood, who was one of the best sprinters in the world at that time. And I was able to use up the other rider, the German Judith Arndt, who was with me, to sort of call her bluff, to say, well, I don't care if we get caught because I've got my teammate back there, and if we get caught, I'll be leading her out for the sprint to take the win. So it was all about a team win for Australia. And that's the difficult thing sometimes with cycling. And I know it took a long time for my family to understand the dynamics and how the teamwork happens within cycling. It really is the absolute epitome of teamwork. I mean, you imagine in any team situation, if we take sport, for instance, whether it's hockey or football or basketball, if the person who scores the highest goals is the only one to stand on the podium, I wonder how much real teamwork that we would actually see occur within that match or within that game of footy, say. So in cycling, even though we only have one person stand on the podium, there's been so much teamwork that's gone behind that to happen. So for me, and when I came into that final straight, I'd been able to use Judith to the best of my ability to be able to have the energy to time my sprint to perfection. And having been to over the course the year before with the course reconnaissance, I had played it over in my head in the year leading up. If it, all the different types of scenarios. You can never cross all scenarios, but I tried to cross as many as I could. And one of them, if it came down to a sprint finish with a small bunch, where I would start my sprint, and that was playing out right before my eyes. I knew the mark of where I was going to start my sprint, and that particular day of the race, it was very windy, huge crosswinds. You can see the flags just blowing in the background. You can see me in the vision actually look down, checking what gear I'm in, and when I know where my mark is, I take off, and I never actually come to the realization that I'm really the Olympic champion until after I've crossed that line. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, you sat up. It seems like you sat up so far before the line, knowing that you'd had the better of the German girl, aunt. But I mean, you've done reconnaissance on that course. You've visualised it over and over. You've played at all the scenarios, and here you are actually executing at your physical best. Hard work meaning opportunity. On that day, is it just relief or is it disbelief? With what one word would you describe that as you do cross that finish line as being?
It's an absolute explosion of all emotions from one spectrum to the other of, disbelief, absolute elation, excitement, joy, happiness, all these huge explosion of emotions. And then after I crossed the line, there was this quiet moment of realization of, wow, I'm actually getting goosebumps now as I relive this in my mind. Wow, I have just achieved my dream of winning the gold medal, of being the best in the world, of becoming Olympic champion in Athens. And, I never get tired of reliving the race. It was a childhood dream, as we've spoken about, and for that moment to then come forth, it's a beautiful thing.
You're listening to Sara Carrigan, OAM and 2004 Olympic Games gold medalist, sharing around her highs, lows and learnings from her remarkable cycling career. Support for today's show comes from Sanitarium PB. Looking to achieve your personal best? Sanitarium PB can help. This refreshing drink contains 32 grams of protein per serve to help with muscle recovery when included as part of a balanced diet. Sanitarium PB is made with a balanced blend of milk and plant proteins, all your essential amino acids, and contains no artificial sweeteners. Find Sanitarium PB in delicious chocolate or vanilla flavours at your local petrol station. Be your personal best, recover and refuel with Sanitarium PB. Support for today's show also comes from Pogo Physio. We exist to help you get back to your physical best following injury. We want everyone who walks through the doors of Pogo Physio to complete their rehabilitation, get back to their physical best, and cross their physio finish line. To find out more about Pogo Physio services, including our unique and award-winning fixed-fee rehabilitation services and our 1-hour initial appointments, jump over to pogophysio.com.au. For now, let's jump back with 2004 Olympic road racing champion Sara Carrigan sharing around her career highs, lows and learnings. I like to ask this now as a parent. I can only imagine, but what was the first thing, your mum's obviously a big part of it, but your father, the one that pushed you down the hill at 6 years of age on the farm, what was the first thing you said to Dad?
Well, see, now this is the thing, right? So you know how I said he wasn't there on that last corner?
Yep.
So through then the medal ceremony, I was looking for Mum and Dad the whole time. So I was actually a little bit distracted throughout the medal ceremony. I always thought that once I'm on the podium, receiving that medal, I would cry and, be full of all emotion and whatnot. But I was up there trying to find my Mum and Dad so I could connect with them, look them in the eye and, give them this, just have this beautiful connection of saying, hey, we did this. But he wasn't there. Couldn't find either of them. So I find out afterwards that throughout the whole 3.5 hours of the race, he'd had a beer and a coffee chaser, and his friend next to him had, once he saw that I had won, he legged him over the fence to try and get him a bit closer to me. And as he legged him over the fence, Dad's leg got caught and he's fallen down, hit his head, and got knocked out. Oh. So when he came to, so this is him telling me, he's woken up and he's looked up and he's like, oh my God, shit, where am I? And it's worked out that he's in the train station, and as he's tried to wander back to the finish line, everything is all packed up. He's wandering around trying to find Mum, and Mum was wandering around trying to find him. So it wasn't until a couple of hours later that I actually got to see Mum and Dad to really relish in that moment of having won the race. I mean,
so Sarah, I think it must be an Olympic first in the history of the Olympic Games movement where a gold medalist supporters or parents in particular have fallen and knocked themselves unconscious, and so you're distracted, you can't find them. What happens next?
Oh, I know. Well, I didn't get to meet up with them until a few hours after the event, and when I did see Dad, he's all banged up, he's got blood on his face. Mum's a bit distressed because she doesn't know if he's okay, but either way, it was still a beautiful reunion. And just to share that moment with them and the fact that they were there, I've just got goosebumps now just even thinking about that, because it couldn't have happened without their help and their support.
Yeah, wow. And I think you mentioned that there's a lot of lack of knowledge from the general public around the team dynamic of cycling, and I'd say there's also, just in general, of course, a lot of not full understanding the lengths and the arduous of training. So what was training like leading into the 2000 Olympic Games? And I know you don't just start training intentionally 12 months out. It's a career-long pursuit. But, how many hours were you on the bike? What did a typical week look like leading into Athens?
Well, generally a week would vary, say, from 400 to 800K a week. That would be a general sort of, bookend, a recovery week to, a big week. We'd have a few, bigger weeks of 1,000K a week, but generally it was 400 to 800. And then of course you have all the off-bike stuff after that. Yoga, massage, stretching, strength conditioning, all those sorts of things. But the thing that was different leading into the Athens Olympic Games was the intent on replicating the course. So we'd been there that year before. We knew what the climb was. We'd mapped it out. And so we went around searching our base in Italy of replicating that hill. And we knew that hill very well. We did lots of efforts on there, motor pacing on there, lots of visualization, of course, so that when it came time to race, we were ready physically and mentally. And I tell you, there's just absolutely no better feeling in the world than being in peak physical condition. And there is absolutely no greater satisfaction than when all the hours of diligence, courage, resilience collide with that moment of opportunity to, deliver yourself within a whisper of your own personal perfection into places at the edge, the very edge of your dreams. It's a beautiful time. So, when all that training was taking place on that training hill, we had a lot of the boys that were training there with us as well. I loved training with the guys because it would stretch me out, a lot further, because obviously the guys are that bit stronger than the women. So over the years, I always enjoyed training with them. I mean, of course, too, there'd be different banter amongst a training group of guys. So I really enjoyed that as well. But as part of that lead-in to the Athens Olympics, I also did some altitude training, and I did that every year in a place called Livigno, which is right on the border of Switzerland and Italy. And interestingly, at that time, I was the only one out of the three of us, Olivia Golan, Anoni Wood and myself, to go and do that altitude training because I believed in it, because that's what I'd done and that's what I wanted to continue to do. So that was actually quite tricky because we'd had such a great year with the team dynamic and, building that together. Me then pulling myself out to then go do the altitude training, was a tough decision to make sure that, it was going to be the right thing for the team, but also the right thing for me. In the end, of course, it was the right decision for me for my physical and mental approach leading into the games. From a team point of view, we slotted back into doing a couple of races prior to the Olympic Games. So it worked out really well.
And Phil Liggett commentated that, the win was some of the best tactics he'd ever seen in women's cycling. So, there's that flexibility, adaptability met in hard work and strategic preparation all coming together for that one moment. As you say, a beautiful thing.
Yeah, crossing that line was such a rush of emotions, and in realising, in that moment that I was the best in the world, the Olympic champion, it's just pure ecstasy to emerge, victorious in the greatest and most important battle of all, I've got to say, is the conquest of self. So, whilst we are out there competing against the other athletes, in the end, what it comes down to is the battle of yourself. So, we hear quite often, if you've done your best, then that's all you can ask. That winning that battle within yourself. Of course, it can be bittersweet, because if you've given everything of yourself and it's not enough to be the best in the world, then that can be difficult. But then, you go back to the drawing board and try and work out, okay, well, how am I going to step this up a notch and, take my best of myself to be better than the rest.
And then how do you get on with being the Olympic champion? How did life change for you, and how did your own expectations change? Where do you go from there?
Well, actually, Brad, the following year was the worst ever. It was one of the lowest points I'd ever been at, and that was the death of my Australian teammate, Amy Gillett. So I'd come off, one of the best years of my life, and the following year was the worst. And nothing had ever challenged or wavered my commitment to cycling. Everything in my world was cycling. Nothing was ahead of my commitment to cycling. Everything came second to that. However, after the accident in Germany, do you remember the accident in Germany?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was there with my my pro team at that time, and I saw the Australian girls arrive and waved to them out the window, and they went off for a pre-race day course reconnaissance ride, or just a little ride to get the legs going. So when I had found out that the whole Australian team and Amy had been hit by a car, I couldn't believe it. But when you hear such bad news and then you just know that it has happened, what followed from there was something that I could never anticipated or imagined or thought would ever had happened to me. Was everything that came so naturally to me on the bike. Like, I always loved going fast. For me to ride in a big group of riders always came so naturally and easy to me. Cornering, I was sort of like a duck to water, I guess you could say. And after the death of Amy, and obviously, of course, all the Australian teammates that had been critically injured, it was like I was paralysed. I couldn't do anything. I remember the next race that we had after that race was a World Cup in Nuremberg in Germany, and I could not corner, I could not sit in the bunch, I could not go fast, and I was out the back, not able to do anything. So for the rest of the year, I really struggled to get through, but I really wanted to try and make it to the Commonwealth Games, which were held in Melbourne, because it was something where the Australian girls were coming together to celebrate Amy, because that was something that she was aiming for. And I was able to make it through to the Commonwealth Games just in the early that following year. But after that, I took time off. I had to get away from the sport to really take stock, and that's something that I'd never felt before, because cycling was always my number one. So it really put a lot of things into perspective for me, and I actually became like a investigator, where I had to investigate how did I corner, or how did I do all these different skills with so much ease. Like now I was so fearful, I was so anxious, I couldn't do any of it. I was, as I said, I was so paralyzed. So in trying to work out how all of these things were so easy for me, and trying to then build on that and bring it back into my cycling, and working out whether I was actually going to continue at an elite level, that was a really difficult process. But what it gave me, though, now as a coach, is that I understand the fear and the nervousness and the anxiousness that so many new riders have when they first start riding. It has given me the tools to help teach people how to feel confident, and how to perform these different skills. So in giving them skills, you give them safety, which then gives them the enjoyment and the happiness. I mean, in the end, that's what, for me, cycling is all about, helping people to enjoy the joys that I've enjoyed. So through such a terrible an unexpected situation, terrible situation, there has become a lot of good, and obviously I guess that's part of my passion for road safety now, and helping other people to enjoy riding their bike.
Yeah, and listening to you share that so candidly, Sarah, I was sort of thinking, okay, Olympic champion goes to this really dark place the year later with tragic loss of your teammate. And then you said that there was skills give people the safety, which give people the enjoyment. And that just, then I got it. I'm like, okay, well, the skills you had, but the safety aspect was taken away when all of a sudden you realise that accidents can happen, and they happened in front of you and at the elite level, to the loss of one of your teammates. And so I guess that was that loss of safety that, was taken from you. And I presume there was counselling and things that, the team got after that tragedy.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it was definitely a lot of that feel of being unsafe and feeling like I could die. And, I never, ever had that. And yes, there was some counselling to help get through it. But, I understood from that is that, fear has very real effects. And these effects are meant to protect us from danger. And in daily life, small amounts of fear can be beneficial, because it helps us to make sure we can be our best. But in large volumes, fear really becomes paralytic and debilitating. And, I really felt that so clearly. So, one day where I was performing certain skills with ease, and the next I was frozen in my tracks with my mind racing and body tense, that was just so tough. But it's helped me who I am now, and I guess that's also helped me understand that, it's okay to go back to fundamentals. So whether we're talking about, being a person on a bike and, going back to those fundamentals, or whether we're talking, in any area of life, going back to fundamentals can actually be a really beneficial exercise to help build and, help get where you want to go.
You're listening to 2004 Olympic Games champion Sara Carrigan sharing around her highs, lows and learnings from her remarkable career. If you missed last week's episode, I caught up with the reigning world Ultraman record holder, Richard Thompson, as he was just weeks out from taking on the 2018 World Ultraman Championships. Here's a little snippet of what you missed.
There is a lot of self-talk, obviously, but also that there needs to be a lot of quiet. I think it's too long a time to try to rev yourself up and keep repeating the same mantra. But I think when it becomes difficult, it's just about trusting yourself and reminding yourself that you are strong and you're able to get it done regardless of how you're feeling.
To enjoy the full episode, be sure to jump over to iTunes or wherever you enjoy your podcasts from. And while there, be sure to check out the archives of the Physical Performance Show. For now, let's jump back with Sara Carrigan, OAM Olympic champion, sharing around the highs, lows and learnings of her time on 2 wheels. Sarah, we talk about the highs, the lows, and the learnings on this show. So let's throw to the learnings. Are you ready for the performance round? Some rapid fire questions.
All right, throw it at me.
Training session most disliked.
The training session that I most disliked, that's a tough one. I think it would have to be the training sessions on the ergo inside. I mean, whilst they're so beneficial and they're so focused and you can get so much out of them, the thing I love about cycling is being outside and being amongst the elements. So I missed that when I was on the inside. So I'd probably have to say the inside sessions because they hurt too. I mean, outside hurts. Outside hurts as well, but at least you've got the beautiful sunshine and the environment to be immersed in.
You're not a professional cyclist unless you love a bit of pain. Training session most loved.
Training session most loved. I think I loved a lot of. I loved it when we did motor pacing. That was always a real thrill, where we were behind the motorbike, simulating race day. Feeling fast, feeling zippy, feeling light. Really getting those race legs going. I was always a racer, and so I guess having that in training was something that really brought a smile to my face. Even though that hurt too, but it definitely had a lot of fun.
At least it was fast pain. Favorite pre-race meal? What fueled you to that Olympic gold?
Oh, favorite pre-race meal. I mean, a lot of the time we just got given what was organised for us. You know what? Actually, in saying that, I never had a decision in choosing what we could eat at different races. A lot of the time we were at the mercy of what the motels or the race organisers would cook for us. So when it came to a favourite pre-race meal, it was take what you could get.
Just eat. Sarah, who is the athlete you most admire and why?
One of the athletes that has really had a big impact on me from when I was 16 actually was when I received a book from my coach about Michael Johnson. He's a 100, 200 metre runner, a US runner. And I think having read his book and that again, it was that mental side of how he went through a lot of his challenges. I took that book everywhere with me when I travelled, and I would read over and over the different passages in his book to help keep me on track. And I've yet to meet him, and hopefully one day. It's crazy to think, because I remember obviously back in that 16-year-old body thinking, wow, this guy has won Olympic gold and he's done all these amazing things. So for me then now to think that I've won, done the same as him is just doesn't fit.
I think I remember that book, The Gold Trim and the Blue.
Yeah, it's Slaying Your Dragon.
That's it, yes. Oh, gosh, there you go. And yes, you are an Olympic gold medalist, just like Michael Johnson. Who is the toughest competitor that you ever raced and why, Sarah?
Toughest competitor? I reckon Judith Arndt would have to be up there, the German athlete that I was away with in the final of the Olympic Games road race. She was just so always so steady, so consistent, and so I loved how she was sometimes athletes can get really emotional, whereas she always seemed to be really hard and strong and mentally tough. So she has been one of the most successful female riders of the time that I was competing. So it was a lot of respect to have been with her in that final straight of that Olympic road race.
Is there a mantra, or was there a mantra that you used to use when you were racing, Sarah? Some regular self-talk that was on loop.
If it was easy, everyone would do it. Yeah. I think now one of the things that really goes through my mind is be brave, question, and be prepared to challenge. It's about thinking critically and don't take anything as a given. I think something that I've learnt, my years post being an athlete is that it's not always about doing what you've always done, because if you do that, then you're going to get what you've always got. And I think I see that now too, is that just because that's how things have always been done, and I'm not just talking about athletic stuff here, or sports stuff. This is anything in life. I see that that's how things are done. So so people do it that way. However, I want to challenge that. And just because, traditions are there, I mean, sometimes they're there for a reason and they might have some great roots for that, but, that might not hold true now for what we need or for what we want. So I like to question the decisions that I'm making and why I'm making them. What traditions do you follow? Because that's just what you do, So I think authentic leaders, really believe in their own power to achieve their dreams, and because they know which dreams are their own and which are societally or otherwise imposed. And I think that's one of the things is that if you can be really confident in yourself and challenge that and make your own decisions, and that gives you even more power and self-confidence to be able to go what you're after.
Yeah, so much there. Final question in the performance round, Sarah, and that is, how would you describe being in the zone?
Being in the zone means to feel at ease and relaxed. And it's like almost everything is just happening just as you envisage it. And it can be so amazing because it's like, wow, this is what I visualized and this is all happening right before my eyes. So being in the zone is such an awesome place to be because it's all just unfolding and happening around you as you had hoped and had dreamed.
And when was that last time you were in the zone? Mum of two, 3-year-old and 18-month-old?
You know what? We do have little snippets here where, my little, have great little family time with the kiddies, and they're all just, they're playing with each other. And actually it was just the other day where I was enjoying lunch and they were just sitting there feeding each other, and everything was at ease and relaxed, and it's like, oh, how beautiful is this?
There you go, one of those beautiful moments. Hey,
yeah,
Sarah,
in a different sense.
Exactly, a bit different to the gold. But Sarah, well done, you're out of the performance zone. Just a couple of questions to go here. Career learnings, what's one bit of training advice that Sara Carrigan, 2004 Olympic gold medalist, women's road race, would give to people listening in today to help them perform at their best? So if you could boil it all down to one bit of advice, what would it be?
It would be to check in with yourself about what you're passionate about. Because if you're doing what you're passionate about, then you're always going to reach, a greater height than someone else who's doing whatever it is because they think they have to, or someone told them to do it. And of course, then we have a lot more contentment and self-fulfillment if we're doing what we're passionate about. So I think, check in with that.
Yeah. Nice. Reflect. Sarah, personality question. We always like to learn a little bit about the personality of the guests. So if you could have dinner with three people, living or past, who would be at your dinner table, Sarah, and why?
Oh, this is such a tough question. I've had this previously and I've never been able to come up with an answer. We might have to put it on pause while I think about it. I don't think I'm going to be able to come up with someone just in the next second.
That's fine. What about Michael Johnson, slaying the dragon?
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, I would absolutely love to meet him. So, yeah, good answer, Brad. Let's go with Michael Johnson. I'd love to have him at my dinner table.
I'm just sorting your table out.
Yes. So I need 2 more to add to my dinner table, and I'm struggling to think. I know there'd be plenty of people that I would feel so honoured to have at my dinner table, and I can't think now.
Well, may I suggest that if you're at the table and Michael's there, I think Steve, your husband, who has come home to relieve you of the kids so that you could record this, I think Steve should be there.
Yes, well, he's almost always at the dinner table. He sometimes, I'm eating dinner with the kiddies alone. So, yeah, having him at the dinner table would be awesome.
All right.
And as a third one, I'm just trying to think across the world.
Well, technically it's a dinner table of 3. So there's yourself, Michael Johnson and Steve.
Okay, so you're giving me a way out. How kind of you.
It's called teamwork, all right? Sarah, and I know you're under time pressures there, and I want to honour those. A physical challenge for the week. Can be entry-level or difficult. What's Sara Carrigan's physical challenge to listeners of this show going to be?
Okay, cool. Well, what I'd love to challenge is for people to check what is in their food, like, to know what they're eating. There's so many different things, especially now as a mama, you're wanting to make sure that the temperament is, nice and level. There's no big tanties or, big emotions with the kiddies, by eating different things that can be in food. So I've been really conscious of checking what's in food. And, just the other day I bought a packet of grated cheese, and it had preservatives and all these different numbers in it. And I know that affects the behaviour of children. So I think a challenge for us is to be conscious and checking what is in food so that we know what we're eating.
Wow, that is so powerful. So that is a very practical challenge. If you take it on, do let Sarah and myself know. Sarah, before we throw to where people can find you, just finish these sentences. Are you ready for a couple of sentences? The most important thing in life is?
The most important thing in life is to do what you enjoy.
Where does pressure come from?
Pressure comes from yourself.
What drives you to work hard?
What drives me to work hard are my dreams, aspirations, passions.
Are you more externally driven or internally driven?
Internally driven.
What mistakes are you afraid of making?
Ooh, the mistakes that I'm afraid of making. This has actually been, I suppose, a challenge with myself is making mistakes and knowing that it's okay, that it's only your opinion that matters. So if you make a mistake, like sometimes we don't do things because we're worried about what other people might think or the opinion they might have of us, the judgment that might take place. So I think letting all that go allows us to then be a little more free to try things. And when we try things, it's amazing what beauty can come of that. Even though beauty can come in the form of mistakes as well. It can be great learning curves to help ourselves evolve and improve and adapt and be stronger. So there is beauty in mistakes. So hopefully I haven't. Hopefully that's been a. Hopefully that's been a pretty straightforward answer.
That is
Sorry, Brad.
That is a great way to bring our time to an end. Sarah, a fun little one at the end here. Finish this sentence. When you, Sara Carrigan, open your eyes in the morning, When I open my eyes in the morning, I see my 2 kitties and my husband, so my beautiful family. Yeah, gorgeous. Sarah, if we want to follow the journey, the Sara Carrigan Cycling School, connect with you, where can we find you and what's the best way to go about it?
I have a website, saracarrigan.com. I'm on Instagram, Scarrigans, and on Facebook. So I'm also challenging myself to be a little bit more open in sharing my journey and my life on social media. I haven't been so great with that in the past, so that's something that I'm challenging myself with at the moment as well.
Well, Sarah, I think you have shared very well today and really let us into a little bit of the background story of Sara Carrigan. So for that, I want to say thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And I look forward to hearing more of your inspirational people that you talk to and learn from their stories as well. So thanks very much.
So there you have it, another episode of the Physical Performance Show. I trust and I know you enjoyed today's episode featuring Sara Carrigan. If you did, then please do 2 things. 1, let Sarah know, let myself know. You'll find Sarah over on Instagram at @SCarrigans, that's SCARRIGANS, and myself over at Brad_beer, and do let us know what it was that you took, learnt, or enjoyed about today's episode. A big thanks to those show supporters who have been leaving ratings and reviews over on iTunes and also subscribing to the show. Ratings, reviews, and subscriptions really do help the Physical Performance show grow and get into the earbuds of more people who, just like you, are looking to pursue and perform at their physical best. It's a real thrill to see the Physical Performance show sitting inside the top of the iTunes health and fitness charts regularly. So I want to say thank you and thank you again for your support, and in particular, your ratings, reviews, and subscriptions to the show. A big thanks this week to show supporter Searching for Hurt, who left a 5-star rating review over on iTunes, commenting, "No idea how I stumbled onto this show, but I thank my lucky stars that I did. Find the insights that Brad draws out from the athletes fascinating and have been smashing out interviews daily to catch up. Keep up the great work, Brad, and if you haven't listened to a podcast yet, what are you waiting for?" Searching for Hurt, thank you for taking the time to leave that review. And be sure to drop me a message at Brad_beer over on Instagram or Twitter, and we'll get a signed copy of You Can Run Pain Free, the revised edition, out to you in the post. A big thanks to the 3 very, very good folk who make this show possible week in, week out. That is Daryl Misson, our audio engineer, Susan Wilkin, all things show administration, and Matthew Walding, all things graphic design. Of course, another huge thank you to today's show supporter, Sanitarium PB. If you haven't tried Sanitarium PB, then be sure to give it a go. Pick up the drink next time you put in fuel in your car at your local service station and enjoy all the goodness of Sanitarium PB. Podcasts, while free to download, are not free to produce, so Sanitarium PB, your support today is enormously appreciated. Now, coming up on next week's episode of the Physical Performance Show, I catch up with Matt from Sweat Elite. Now, Matt has recently released a book all about the training methods of Eliud Kipchoge, the current world marathon record holder. It's an Amazon best-selling book subtitled History's Fastest Marathoner, an insight into the Kenyan life that shapes legends. If you're into running or if you're just into physical performance, then you're not going to want to miss next week's episode of the Physical Performance Show featuring Sweat Elite's Matt Inglis Fox. Until then, keep pursuing your physical best performance. I'm Brad Beer, and this has been the Physical Performance Show.